Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Spotlight. In this conversation, CLINT and I are chatting with Shaun Kirkwood, Director of Educational Technology at Atlanta International School. This spotlight highlights the ways that Shaun and his team are collecting data to track the success and impact of their work as coaches. This conversation is an important reminder about how valuable data is, even if you don't know exactly how you're going to use it before you collect it. For coaches looking for more ideas on tracking their impact in a school context, this episode details how you can both collect and then purposefully use that data from coaching. If you enjoy any part of this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more conversations like this, please subscribe to our channel and click the notifications bell to find out every time we release a new episode. Remember, you can also listen to the full Coach Better episode wherever you get your podcasts. We are passionate about the impact coaching can have on student learning, school culture, and teacher professional growth, and we want to help you coach better. We've got some great opportunities for more learning after today's conversation, so stick around all the way to the end. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better. Today, CLINT and I are excited to be chatting with Shaun Kirkwood, who is currently the Director of EdTech at Atlanta International School, but we know each other from our shared experience teaching in international schools in Asia. Shaun, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for having us. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Can you tell us a little bit about your education background so we can get to know a little bit about you and your education experience?
Yeah, perfect. So I'm from Australia originally, and I actually began my working life as an engineer. I was a civil engineer, and I worked for about 5 years in civil engineering. I took a gap year and went to Europe and traveled around and had an epiphany to become a teacher at that time. So I started work in a small country school in Australia. We had about 80 kids at the time, and I worked there for 3 years, and then I moved overseas to China. I worked in Japan and in Singapore before taking a year to do some consulting, and now I work in Atlanta, and this is my second year here. So I always think to myself, when I did engineering, I didn't super love the job, and I didn't super love studying engineering either, and it was a bit of a drag for me. But the thing that I really enjoy looking back on is the fact that engineering really made me in the end. I ended up sitting for 8 hours a day in front of a computer 5 days a week. And although I didn't love it at the time, when I stepped into education, there were all these crossover points where I saw things that were maybe either inefficient or could use a good spreadsheet. And then I started doing things like that, or using my sort of technical skills on a computer to work with the kids and work with other teachers, and that's what sort of led me into the coaching role that I have now. And so I'm always thankful for the fact that I did engineering, even though I didn't maybe enjoy it as much as I thought I might have when I started.
Okay, I'm going back to another thing that you mentioned earlier that I want to come back to. You talked about the coaching model being really valuable for actually providing an opportunity to calculate some metrics or to track some metrics on, what you're successful in and what maybe where you're not meeting the needs. What are you doing right now, and what do you anticipate doing in terms of tracking that kind of data? Like, what kinds of things are you looking for? Do you anticipate looking for? How might you help teachers reflect on some of that data too, to maybe look back at their own practice and improve their practice? Any thoughts on data?
Yeah. So what we did last year, because last year we had that issue of like where are we working and who are we reaching, those sort of things. And so what we did was we used a simple Google form that basically was a form where we would say, well, for instance, in my situation, which grade level are you working in? Who was the person? And then subject areas, and then basically, are you in there doing like Are you doing coaching? Are you teaching children? Are you planning with teachers? And there was a range of different things. And that was very handy, just more than anything, to see what the distribution is across the school. So, and also, well, there were two big insights for me. One was like, which parts of the school do I work in the most? And then secondly, what am I doing? So what I did find was we had some issues towards the start of the year with it, just, normal start of school setup issues, Google Classroom we had some issues with, and different bits and pieces. And I found that like the amount of time that I was doing tech support last year was significant. Like it was big. And so it sort of brought about a conversation to say, well, in the primary school, at the moment in our building, we have our IT support is housed in our secondary school. And so for primary teachers to get their kids over to IT support is difficult because they have to go at recess, or there's just no simple way to do it. So it brought up a conversation to say, well, perhaps we should have some level of IT support in the primary school, because these are young children. They can't just disappear. The teachers can't disappear out of the classroom. And that being said, that problem hasn't been solved. It's a conversation at the moment, but at least it's a conversation, because without, like, if we weren't tracking that information, then we would have no grounds to have the conversation. And so that's where I think there are two ways to approach that sort of data collection. Is one, you do need to think about, like, what do you want at the end? So, or what do you want to be able to show or learn at the end? But sometimes there are things that come out of it that you will never, like, you can't really predict. So for me, like, the fact I put the IT support line in there just because I realized that I was helping people with different things. I didn't think it would be as significant as it was at the end. But again, it's one of those things that if I hadn't have put it in there, if I hadn't have sat down one day and thought about what are all the things I do in a day, and really, like, flesh that out carefully, then if I didn't put it in there, then it wouldn't have come up in the data at the end. So for us at the moment, really, the data collection we do is really more around contact with people. So who are we working with and what are we doing? And that's just for within our team more than anything, to look at, like, are we using our time in the most effective way we can? And also, are we dominating by just only working with, like, say, one grade level? And should we maybe split up or work with some other grade levels that we haven't contacted at this point in the year? So it's still early in the year, so we're still sort of setting up. So we haven't sort of delved deeply into that at this point. But like I say, last year, certainly at the end of the year, to reflect on what we did and who we worked with, it was very handy.
I really appreciate the point that you made about having the data enables you to have the conversation. And I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Like, I think obviously you would put IT support for something that you're doing, right? Because that's going to be a big part of your job. This is a follow-up question. How do you know what's worth tracking if it's going to be so unexpected? I know that was unexpected for you, and that was fortuitous that you had it on the survey, right? But even still, it's kind of like within the scope of your job. Like, I don't know, is there a way to, I don't know, I'm wondering, like, how could I find that unexpected data that prompts this great conversation that I never would have planned had I not, you know what I mean? Like, because by the end of the year, you've done all your work, you've tracked all your data. If you didn't track it, you're lost.
Yeah. So I had a conversation with John Burns once upon a time, and I will say, if people don't follow John Burns already, he's one of my educational heroes. I really appreciate the way he thinks about things. And one day, I talked to him. He was talking about a separate issue similar to the one I just mentioned, where he was having a conversation with management about changing some things based on data that he had. He hadn't collected it; he just had it. And he talked about the fact that, like, basically, if you're going into a meeting or say with management in particular, they're going to want to know about, like, research and data. They're the two things that they really want to know about. And it can be the same with parents, like, it can be a little bit different. But particularly, like, when you're trying to support a position, he said if you've done your homework and you have research and data, it's very hard for people to undermine you as such. And that's not to say that sometimes you're not wrong, and sometimes that what you're asking for is maybe not necessarily what needs to happen at that point in time. But if you go in and you don't have either of those things, it's very easy for someone to just say, no, we're not doing it. So when I talked to John about that, I literally asked almost the same question you asked right now, Kim, was like, what do you, in terms of data, like what do you collect? And his answer to that was like anything I can get my hands on.
Everything.
And I thought like it's an interesting approach. And to be honest, I've started doing that. When we get an email that's like our DP results at school, I have a folder in Google Drive that's basically just like, I think I call it school stuff. It should probably be called school data. But it's basically what I do is like anything like that that comes in, if it's a presentation or it's a spreadsheet or it's a whatever, I just save a copy of it in there. Because it comes back to that one conversation I had with John, is like just save everything. Because you don't necessarily know when you're going to need it. And the thing is, like, you have so many things come and go here and there that you can probably find it in an email or whatever, but it's just easier if you put it somewhere and you put some thought as to what it might be. So like I then have like folders under there that sort of fall into parts of the school and things like that. But like I say, I think you can definitely plan for what you want to collect. And I think particularly when you're doing like student data things, like it's really important to think about like what information do you want at the end and how you're going to use it so that you can make sure you collect what you need. But at the same time, there are so many incidental pieces of data that pass through an organization, particularly via email, that it's worth having like a little folder that's just like school data and just popping things in there. And like I say, it's not all useful and you end up with a lot of stuff that you'll never probably ever use. But that being said, on those days when you have the meeting and you really need something to back you up and you find it, that's pretty amazing. So it makes it all worthwhile.
It's such a good point because you're talking about data on a much larger scale. Like our question was a little bit more about how do you track data as a coach and, track your successes and, work on self-improvement, that kind of stuff, and help teachers do the same kind of thing. But you've taken it to the next level of talking about the importance of coaches and coaches as leaders being able to really concretely demonstrate what is and is not happening and how it's impacting student learning or how it's impacting teacher professional learning or how it's impacting, whatever it might be. And I think that's something, at least I will say as a coach, I struggle with, like keeping track of data in general in any format. And I know it's something lots of coaches struggle with. So I think your advice or the strategy to just kind of, I almost feel like what you're telling us is get comfortable with data, find a way or a process to manage the data that comes across your desk, your virtual desk, your paper desk, however it happens. And then know that when you're going to have those important meetings with school leaders, go back through what you've collated and what you've collected and put some research, some data, some actual facts to whatever you're asking for or trying to demonstrate with them, because that's going to be the key point that they're looking for. And I do think that's an area where coaches, lose, and I don't think it's a win or lose, but, lose a pitch because they don't bother to do that. And I think a lot of it is because you don't even think of it. So this strategy of just collating, keeping it organized, making sure you're using it in ways that are relevant to the people you're trying to pitch ideas to, that's gold.
That's cool.
Well, and what I hear from that too is the importance of data fluency and being able to, I think one of the skills in any leadership role is to be able to connect the dots in ways that other people may not, or be able to put dots in front of people that they can then connect. And it's having that data at your fingertips and being able to sift through and look at that data, but also being able to take two things that people may not see are connected. Here are our DP results. And also, I also happen to have our, MYP results from 2 years ago. And that's the same cohort of students. What happens when we start looking at that, and just because I happen to have that on hand and I was curious about that, and having that kind of curiosity about, I wonder if there is a connection, or I wonder what the data says, or being able to take two sets of data and start looking at those in interesting ways, or maybe even more than two sets of data. And I think it's that comfortability and that fluency. And this is where your spreadsheet mojo, it's all coming back to spreadsheets. This is where that spreadsheet mojo really comes in handy, because there are tools that help you do that if you know how to leverage those tools effectively.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy today's episode? Then you will love the Coach Microcredential program. We know because our current participants are always sharing their feedback with us, and we ask them to share their experiences with you. Each week, we'll be sharing a new voice from inside the cohort of the coach, so you can get a participant's perspective on what will make the program just right for you.
There are many reasons that I would recommend someone to join the coach. But most of all, and I'll just capture it all in one thing, professional flexibility. I was hesitant to join the program because I was taking on this new role this year, and I knew I was going to be very busy. I'm a coordinator, I'm a coach, and I'm doing basically a full-time micro-credential with the coach. But they've been fantastic about, being very flexible with due dates, being flexible about me rearranging the work that I want to do, because that's another piece to it. They have also been incredibly flexible in terms of professional experience. For example, some of the readings that we do and some of the materials I've done before. I've been a coach for 8 years already, and they've been fantastic in all regards. So I say go for it. Definitely take the coach. I couldn't recommend it more.
This is just one of the voices from our current The Coach cohort. Here's what a few others have to say.
I'd really advise anyone interested in taking the coach to take the plunge and go for it.
So I highly recommend it.
So do it.
But overall, this course is fantastic because it's made me feel awesome. It's made me feel excited for my future.
If I were to give any piece of advice or message to future cohort members, it is to take the course. If you are on the fence, please take it.
As you can see, this micro-credential is for all educators, not just coaches, because you develop the coaching skills you can use in all aspects of your practice. You don't have to be a coach to have a coaching conversation with a student, a fellow colleague, a school leader, or even a parent. When you're ready to learn more about the coach, click on the link below or reach out to us at Eduro Learning on any of our social media platforms. Registration for our next cohort opens soon. Don't miss it. Expand your professional learning network, dive deep into 26 weeks of curated coaching content, and get your own private mentor for an entire academic year. We can't wait to work with you. Are you ready to take your coaching skills to the next level? Join the next cohort of The Coach and make it happen.